Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space. Aetheral Space 17.37, Churchbell. We are back.
We are back, and we are excited. Last we left off, we were getting some backstory on how the final church got involved.
Yeah, they were there before anyone else.
Yeah, there's the Angels of Hostility, which are like these triplets, and one of them's like straight business, one of them's like a little...
Zesty.
How do I say this? Zesty. And then the other one's a sleepy little lazy guy. And their names were... I remember one had like a J name.
Yeah, the leader is Jussie. The zesty one is Misi or Mickey. And the sleepy one is Frey.
That's right.
There is a naming scheme. There's a little Easter egg naming scheme, but you'll probably figure it out.
Not tell me what it is.
No, you'll figure it out.
Okay. Day number 30.
Minus 30.
Negative 30. My bad. Day negative 30 before this started. The plans of the Angels of Hostility on Nirmut were based around two things: Frey's ability and Hotel d'Assad. Once upon a time, Hotel d'Assad had been the aether ability of a man called Clowngut, one of Henry the Glutton's sous chefs, a maniac who had delighted in torment and vivisection. It allowed him to pool his victims into an aetheral realm all his own, a massive hotel complex, equipped with everything he needed to extract his enjoyment from them. Nobody could enter Hotel d'Assad without Clowngut's consent, nor could anyone leave it. He was the demiurge of his own torturous world, so it was like an evil version of Palisadium, Princedom. When Henry had been alive as Supreme, how did he make it so there's a condition where you can't leave? Because not even Dragon can do that with like Gemini World or his mind thing.
I think it probably would have been specifically for non-Aether users. Or those substantially weaker than him.
Damn. When Henry had been alive as Supreme, with his depravity standing as the utmost power in the galaxy, Clowngut and the other members of Henry's kitchen had been able to indulge themselves freely. The people of the Supremacy had been their playthings, and none would dare lift a finger against them. Once Henry died, however, the bill came due. Members of the kitchen were lynched in the streets, vengeance finally taken by the families and friends of those who they'd once brutalized. Even Clowngut, a mighty sous chef, had been cornered by a hit squad while fleeing Supremacy space. By the time they were done with him, he was little more than a lump of battered meat. The worst thing that could happen would be for someone like Clowngut to linger in this world as an aether awakening. Luckily, that wasn't what happened. Not totally, anyway. Awakening is hardly a binary state. Some retain little intelligence, while others are essentially carbon copies of their original selves. For Clowngut, barely anything of his original ego survived, but his ability, Hotel d'Assad, made it through fully intact. Taking the form of a freestanding door, anyone in possession of the posthumous aether armament could make use of it as they pleased. So this isn't an awakening, it's just an armament.
It's an armament, it's sort of a grey line. Okay. A grey area. It's basically an armament, but it came out of an awakening-esque scenario.
The brute called Clowngut had used Hotel d'Assad as little more than a convenient torture chamber, but for the Quiet Choir it made an invaluable espionage tool. Right now, the Angels of Hostility were stationed right in the heart of Zepan, and right now, the Angels of Hostility were stationed nowhere at all. At any given time, 2 of the 3 angels resided within Hotel d'Assad. When one of the angels was on the move, they would carry Hotel d'Assad and their comrades in their aether. When all 3 of the angels were in their secret base, the freestanding door would be concealed using an optic camouflage. In essence, they brought their base of operations with them wherever they went. Right now, the freestanding door sat invisible, deep in a dark alleyway of Ward 2. In the lobby of the fantastical hotel, the angels had piled up a mountain of pillows and sheets, pilfered from the countless rooms that lined the complex's hallways. Frey was slumped over right in the center of the structure, nestled in a throne of slumber, his chest gently rising and falling as he snoozed. Soft snores filled the space. JC and Misi watched from nearby sets as Frey drifted into his true sleep. This was the second trump card that would guarantee success on Zepan. This was what made the Angels unrivaled when it came to information gathering. Even in the grip of the Sandman, Frey's lips slowly moved. Nightmare on Elm Street. There was no time a human being was more defenseless than when they slept, and no thought was more vulnerable than a dream. I do love that amongst all the classic literature and tales, somehow the hit movie Nightmare on Elm Street made it.
Well, every member of the Quiet Choir, I'm pretty sure every member of the Quiet Choir has a horror movie ability.
What's the choristers again?
Well, we've not seen like his main ability, but we've seen Melly, who's like his little fairy. That's sort of separate from the horror movie theming, though.
Oh.
But we had Jamie back in Arc 9, I think it was, and he had like Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, stuff like that.
Oh, that's fun.
And we have Jassy with
was
Friday
Pablo's?
He wasn't part of the Quiet Choir.
Oh.
We have Jassy with Friday the 13th.
That's true. What does Friday the 13th do again?
That's the one that turns him into the big monster that we've been seeing through the arc.
Oh, yeah. Frey's ability Nightmare on Elm Street took advantage of this. By spending time asleep himself, he could slowly extend a nigh undetectable web of aether from his location, ensnaring every human within and giving him access to their dreams. That is awesome. He could observe their dreams, he could interfere with their dreams, he could end their dreams, he could steer their dreams in whatever direction he wanted, and in doing so, force the target's subconscious to fill in any details he left empty space for. For someone as skilled as Frey, reading a dream was no different from reading a mind. His would be an invisible hand, fingers slowly reaching further and further across Z-Pan. No wonder he's so tired all the time, his brain's always operating, even when he sleeps. Until they could reach into any sleeping head and pluck free the knowledge they needed. The only problem, if it even was a problem, was that Frey's intrusion left a bitter aftertaste in her mind. So, for the foreseeable future, the people of Z-Pan would be having bad dreams. Wait, didn't you mention that like the beginning?
Well, if you'll notice, if you go back through the arc, you'll notice that every time someone is described as waking up in this arc so far, they're described as having a bad dream that they don't really recall.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure I've done it like every single time someone's woken up. They're like, oh my god, what a horrible dream.
Teehee? A crusade, Zeroth mused, lining up his shot. A crusade, you say? Who was Zeroth again?
He's the humorist Apex Bishop.
Yeah, but that name sounds familiar.
He was the one that was like created, and like as he was fighting Bruno Sereni, he like got more and more smart and intelligent until he decided fighting was pointless and left.
Oh, so he became the Apex Bishop instead of what's-her-face?
Yeah.
The cat girl. That's awesome. The humorless Apex Bishop was a giant of a man, the proportions visible beneath his black cloak, just slightly off, as if his constituent parts didn't quite fit together, the faintest scars running over his pale skin. Just from his build, most people would have thought him a brute, but they couldn't have been more wrong. So that last sentence is a little bit of a runoff sentence, the first one. In just a few short years, Zeroth's wits alone had taken him from a penniless street preacher to the Apex Bishop of the humanist sect. He was not a man to be underestimated. Bang! Zeroth fired the rifle he'd been aiming so carefully, and in the distance a many-winged bird shattered into glass. Satisfied with his accuracy, the Apex Bishop slung the rifle over his shoulder as he turned to look back at his colleague. The chorister just smiled right back up at him. Yes, the Superbian Apex Bishop replied. A crusade. I trust you're familiar with the concept? The two of them stood on a vast yacht in the middle of an even vaster ocean. All around their resplendent vessel, clear blue water stretched off in every direction, reflecting the sourceless sunlight above in a display of pure majesty. There wasn't even a horizon to detract from the glorious sight. Needless to say, this was not reality. This was the garden, the digital world where the majority of the Paradises' consciousness resided. Normally, the Apex Bishops of the other two sects would never set an imaginary foot in this place, but these were times where never was coming to mean little. In order to make his proposal with all three Apex Bishops present, the chorister had agreed to come to this realm. Of course I'm familiar with the crusade, Zeroth rumbled as the chorister took his place, aiming at the distant targets over the water. All three branches of the final church come together, pool their armed forces, and assault an external target that has invoked their wrath. It's happened 6 times throughout our history. Bertios, PX-12, Zemblanity, Stone Purpose, Juragog, and Dispager. A textbook would be impressed, the chorister replied, taking... I saw what's coming, sorry. Taking a test shot that sailed far off into the nothing. You want to read this one?
How about it, then? Why don't we turn 6 into 7?
I did the thing with my hands.
What thing?
This, you know, Zeroth crossed his arms. 6-7.
What? I don't get it. What?
6-7.
You okay?
Alright, I'm not dealing with this right now. Zeroth crossed his arms. I won't say that I fully disapprove. he said. "However, I won't have you tell me that such a crusade offers nothing but benefits. If what you've told me is true, and by the time we embarked upon such a campaign, the Pandershi Foundation would already be the most severe enemy of the UAP and the Supremacy, we'd be involving ourselves in a conflict between all of the galaxy's great powers." "No," the chorister insisted, lining up his second shot. "The timing is the most important factor. By attacking Nermut before the UAP or the Supremacy, we'd be establishing it as our conflict. They'd be the ones involving themselves, not us. The destruction of the Pandershi Foundation would make the final church heroes in the eyes of those they just brutalized. Never mind the benefits to our internal affairs. We'd be drowning in goodwill from the rest of the galaxy after the end of the crusade." He fired, and again he missed. "That's assuming a swift victory on our end," Zeroth pointed out. "I hear people talk about the Pandershi Foundation in much the same way they talk about the Paradisus sect. Technology beyond the rest of the galaxy. I doubt they'd be the easy opponent you're hoping for. Where's the third Apex Bishop? Is he not chilling, or is he the bird?"
They're not here yet.
"You don't think our armed forces are up to the task?" the chorister asked. "We are all diminished from the chaos at the True Meat," Zareth replied. "Even the Paradisus were attacked by the contender Avaman after the fact. Taking on a force we don't fully understand while we are not at our best. I'll admit I don't see us losing, but there's a risk of this dragging on into a longer conflict than we want." He cracked his neck, the light from the sky casting strange shadows down his face. "The targets for previous crusades were chosen with great care," Zeroth continued. "Our predecessors wanted battle righteous enough to inspire fervor, but not so ferocious that it would create fatigue. The preparations for this crusade are proceeding too quickly for my liking. It feels like we're throwing caution to the wind." The chorister turned to look at Zeroth, raising an eyebrow. "Preparations?" he asked casually. "Why, Zeroth, what do you mean? We still haven't agreed we're actually going ahead with it." Zeroth snorted. "Dispose of the charade, Malister. The Paradisus joined hands with you a good while ago. That's why one of their members accompanied your angels, isn't it?" For a good moment, the chorister just stood there, caught between pretense and confession. Then, realizing the futility of keeping the play going, he just let out a sigh and turned back to the ocean. His rifle found its mark, and he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! Far in the distance, his target crumbled into glass. "Madam Apex Bishop," the chorister smirked, "I think it's time we make our pitch." "Finally! I was wondering how long you'd make me wait." Zeroth turned to look at as a shining aurora beamed down onto the other side of the boat, like a spectral spotlight with shards of metal floating within it, rearranging themselves into new constellations every couple of seconds. This was the somewhat abstract avatar of Duke James, the Paradisus Apex Bishop. Unlike the Superbian and Humulist Apex Bishops, the leader of Paradisus had a fixed term, and so the one who had come to meet them today had only recently come into her position. Duke James's shards spanned through the air as she processed the situation, before locking together into a vague cylindrical structure. "Zeroth, I trust you understand the situation," she said, her voice a resonance of bells. "It's as you said. Myself and Malister are aligned on this. Should the Humanists refuse, you will be the ones out of step. I know you've had to struggle against Gertrude's loyalists in your ranks. Can you really afford to give them fuel for the fire?" Zeroth let out a heavy sigh, seeing that he had already been trapped in his decision. He stepped over to the side of the boat and got down on one knee, letting his hand drift in the imaginary ocean experimentally. The chorister and Duke James waited as Zeroth took his time to answer. Time, at least, was something he could still take from them. "Crusade," Zeroth said quietly. "Crusade," the chorister said solemnly. "Crusade," Duke James said decisively. Day -17. The Angels of Mortality had not...
I keep saying that for some reason. It's not even close.
How about a popcorn?
The Angels of Hostility had not stepped foot outside of Hotel de Sade in weeks, but that didn't mean they had been idle. With Nightmare at Elm Street at their disposal, they could simply sit here and carefully put together the intelligence, bit by bit. Each time he slept... Sorry?
Nightmare on Elm Street.
You're absolutely right. Nightmare on Elm Street. Each time he slept, Frey dived into the dreams of the city's elites. In the dream of Blade, he had seen a botched heist from long ago, scrambling for the Maker Guild's prizes, foiled by an infuriating detective. In the dream of Axe, he had seen a ship drifting through the endless dark of space, all hope lost, all light swallowed, all humanity reduced to vile instincts. In the dream of Fist, he had seen a mansion put together for a wedding night, and on the threshold a battered corpse. Through the dreams of Unseelie and Seelie alike, the Angels of Hostility had scraped together comprehensive maps of much of Zepan, including Oberon's inner structure. Those maps now lined the walls of the foyer, the city replicated in miniature. Many secrets, too, had slipped into their grasp. The truth of the White Light, the circumstances of the Unseelie's recruitment, Zephyr Pandershi's deepest, darkest deeds. It had been quite a bit to digest. When they'd come here, the Angels had considered Pandersh the enemy simply because that was the mandate of the mission. Now, though? Now they understood he was the sort of scum who shouldn't be allowed to live. Of course, they hadn't been able to extract everything through dreams. There were some in Zepan who didn't sleep at all, or whose methods of rest were so alien that Frey couldn't breach them. Phantasm, Maxim, Pandersh himself. They built their plans around these individuals, filling in the gaps from those closest to them. As ever, their work had been efficient. There was still time to go, but all the preparations were long since complete. All there was to do now was wait, and wait, and wait. Popcorn!
Wow, you read like one page.
Sorry, this is a scene I don't trust myself with.
Let me get ready then. Day 0. The doors to the Deus Nobiscum's water chamber opened with barely a whisper of sound. It was a grand room of exquisitely carved marble, water falling from the hands of huge sculptures to fill the various recesses in the floor, giving off the impression of an ancient bathhouse. Holograms of fossilized sea creatures swam through the air above, their shining blue bodies providing light, while below, the water was clear enough that one could see right through to the bottom. This was a place of repose and healing. If nothing else, then tranquility was a necessity. And right in the middle of it all sat Isabella Phi Testament, seemingly blind to it all. The chorister stiffened. I would remove the first of it all after middle. The chorister stiffened as he entered the room, approaching the girl he hoped would one day take the mantle of Apex Bishop from him. The nurse at her side bowed respectfully as he came over, but Isabel didn't so much as twitch. She just stared into space with her heterochromic eyes, the thoughts behind them completely inscrutable, if she even was thinking. During the chaos of the true meet, Isabel Phi Testament had been hit by a horrific backlash from her own mental ability, and the sheer trauma of the experience had driven her into a comatose state. Even so long down the line, even after she'd awoken, it was difficult to tell how lucid it was. Every now and then her gaze would focus. Every now and then she would mouth what might have been a word, but it was a slow walk out of the dark. Even with the aid of physical and mental therapy, all they could do was wait. "Leave us," the chorister said curtly to the nurse, and she quickly acquiesced. Isabel didn't so much as glance over. As soon as the chamber was empty, save for them, the chorister tapped his foot against the marble floor below. At his unspoken command, a large white block rose up, serving as a seat for him to rest upon. For a few minutes he just mirrored Isabel, staring out at the shining aurora, listening to the trickling of water. Then he spoke. "We're embarking upon crusade," he said gravely. "Very soon now. Most likely we'll start moving within the day. I should have told you earlier, but I suppose I'm telling you now. My apologies." Isabel said nothing. "It's unfortunate." The chorister crossed his legs, looking up at the ceiling. "Nobody ever wants to go to war. Of course, nobody ever wants to go to war. It's just the benefits of this crusade are too great to just cast aside. Listen to me. What kind of priest am I?" Isabel said nothing. "Unity," the chorister mumbled. "That's the most important thing. Right now, we're on the edge of the cliff, us Superbians. All it would take is the slightest effort from the other two sects to push us into the abyss. This crusade, it'll give us breathing room. It'll make a solid foundation for you to take over. Once you're ready. Isabel said nothing. Sometimes the chorister wondered why he placed so much faith in the future of Isabel Phi Testament. It wasn't as if they'd had an especially close relationship before what happened to her. She wasn't especially strong. She wasn't especially vicious. What exactly gave him the certainty that she would make a good apex bishop? The chorister had lived a blood-stained life. Without a doubt, he was the sort of man who would have killed this girl long ago to ensure his own permanence. He couldn't deny that. And yet, he hadn't. Why? Because every time the thought struck him, it was accompanied by a memory. Words that had been said to him by this girl's eldest brother, the one people had come to call the teacher. Aether isn't meant for killing people. Aether isn't meant for hurting people. The teacher had been someone who had understood the flow of Aether better than anyone the chorister had ever met. He had been more at home among the dancing sparks than his fellow men. At the time, though, the chorister hadn't been able to tell from the teacher's tone whether those words were a statement of fact or a wistful dream. He still didn't know. But all the same, those were the sorts of words that stuck with you. Indeed, the chorister had lived a blood-stained life. Just like every child of the quiet choir, he was someone who had been grown for his specific role. Without thought and without mercy, he had killed and killed and killed. Anything unnecessary growing inside him he had scraped away to form melee. He was a creature of violence through and through. Even now that he was the one who wielded others as tools, rather than being wielded himself, he still belonged to violence in the end. He wasn't the sort of person who should dictate the future. Isabel Phi Testament was not strong, and Isabel Phi Testament was not vicious. Those in themselves were her greatest qualifications. The future should rest in the hands of those sorts of people, perhaps. Or perhaps the chorister was just projecting his hopes onto someone who could not deny them. Or at least someone he thought couldn't deny them. With excruciating effort, Isabel's gaze slid over in the chorister's general direction. Her lips twitched in movement, soundlessly at first, but eventually managing to force out a single strained word. Don't. The chorister blinked. He opened his mouth, to reassure or to apologize, even he didn't know, but before any words could slip free, it closed right back up again. His face returning to the cold visage of an assassin, he looked over his shoulder. Whisper hadn't been visible as she'd entered the room, nor had she made even a single sound, but as leader of the quiet choir, the chorister had learned a long time ago to see the invisible and hear the inaudible. She curtsied in greeting, face concealed behind her veil of white hair. When she spoke, her voice was quiet as ever, but the words seemed to dominate the room. A simple statement that would rearrange the stars. News from Serendipity, sir. The chorister looked back at Isabel. It should be Isabel? You've had her as Isabel every other time.
Yeah, sorry.
You're good. This time, when his mouth opened, it was to provide neither reassurance nor apology. It was just to release a simple statement of his own. It started. Wow. It started.
Ooh. Meanwhile, on Serendipity.
So, brother in quotation marks in the implication, so the teacher was a testament and presumably the first one?
Yes, he was Alpha.
Interesting. Very interesting. I want to know more about this Alpha.
Ooh.
Alright, where are we? I'm trying to... here we are. Stift asks, are there any big athletic events like the Olympics? Are there Paralympics, Aether Olympics, etc.?
I assume in the UAP at least there'd probably be some sort of Aether-based sports event. Perhaps we'll investigate that in future content. But in the Supremacy, I imagine anything that's not like a combat sport is fairly like looked down upon.
Strength of sportsmanship.
Mm.
Stift asks, are there any mass-produced Aether armaments? Like, does the Makers Guild have a line of special Aether guns that do a specific thing the Supremacy requested for, like, a special squad? Or is there an advanced cooking knife set that just does things on its own that's sold to rich people?
I can say there are like mass-produced ones, but they'll be very simple ones. You won't have ones that do like a very complex or powerful ability. If you have like lots of them made very quickly, they're not going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Stift also asks, are there charts for music, and is there musical diversity like today, or is it a lot more homogenized? Are there musical periods many look back on fondly like the 80s, or is that too far in the past?
They would not remember the 80s, I'll tell you right now. But yeah, there is music. I'm pretty sure like there's a lot of diverse music, because I'm pretty sure I mentioned once there's like bug music made from bugs.
I think what Stift meant, it's like kind of like how we look back on the 80s. Do they have periods where it's like, I remember 900s music? Or
yeah, absolutely. That's human nature, I would think.
Yeah. Stift also... These are pretty much all Stift, sorry. Stift also asks, have all killing arts been invented, or are there still some being made today? Is there someone who knows all of the killing?
Well, it's a system of martial arts, basically. It's weird martial arts, so like probably like there's always going to be more stuff to do, I imagine. Like ways to utilize existing principles, at least.
Reroom asks, how many killing arts are in Principality?
A good number, say like 312.
Perfect. All right, let's go ahead.
Completely arbitrary number.
Thank you all for watching, and hey, maybe we'll even see you next time. Yeah?
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.